Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle, along with Rachel Santizo. Our guest is Tiffany, and we will meet her in just a second. This is one of the most watched and listened to podcasts around the world, we can say now, dealing with addiction and recovery. So, and we owe that all to all of you out there watching and listening. So thank you very much. And I need to say hello to Columbus, Ohio, right? For some reason, we have a lot of people in Columbus.
They lost.
Hmm?
They lost the game.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they did. I thought Notre Dame beat them.
No, they beat Notre Dame.
Just kidding.
Didn't they?
No.
I'm sure they did. Look, we have no football fans.
We'll figure
in the
this
background.
out.
I'm sure they did. Otherwise,
Rhonda will have to cook me dinner if they didn't.
Okay, I will. We always try to start out with a little news story, and this one sort of applies to Tiffany because fentanyl was one of Tiffany's drug of choices. The DEA this week, it'll be a little dated when people are watching this, but they issued an advisory. This is terrible, about brightly colored fentanyl pills and powder that look like candy and are designed to attract children and young adults. And have you heard of that? They call it rainbow fentanyl.
I haven't heard of that. I just know it when it was the little tiny white powder.
Yeah, that's what I always thought it was. Can you imagine that whoever is manufacturing fentanyl saying, how can we attract more kids to do this?
Yeah, and why? Like, I'm so confused as to why. I understand, like, the addiction part and using and selling, but why are you trying, I guess, to manufacture? That's sad.
Oh, I
It's
know.
sad.
It's disgusting. Anyway, that's our little news thing. And thank goodness the DEA, whatever you think of the DEA, thank goodness they issue alerts like this so people
Right.
can be, looking. You have a young son, and this way you would know, because you wouldn't know even though you used fentanyl and you were used to it as a little white powder. If some brightly colored pill or powder, you wouldn't know that was fentanyl unless you heard something like that. Anyway, Tiffany is a successful graduate of the Odyssey House program. You were in the program, you and I were, I picked her up where she was living. You were in the program for a year, right?
Yeah, I was at Lighthouse for 8 months and then Sugar House IOP for 6 months.
And now you're in transitional sober living.
Yep.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
You
you.
look great. You look
Yeah?
clear and everything. One of the
Thank you.
things driving over here, her claim to fame, I guess, I don't know if you infamy maybe, is she said that she's been arrested in almost every county in Utah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That was the joke of one of my therapists at Lighthouse. So he always got on my case about having a case in every single county. So,
And what were the charges for the counties? Were they
I
always the
have-
same?
No, I lost my license when I moved to Utah after my first DUI. So I always got like driving or traffic infractions and stuff like that. I got 2 DUIs within 18 months. I have 5 possessions and paraphernalias. So I'm lucky I didn't have to go to prison.
Yeah. I love hearing that. I know that you're stating a lot of charges, but it's also made you the woman you are, and look at how courageous and strong you are. So I love hearing that stuff.
And now I'm on paper.
Hey.
See? Let's start at the beginning. When did you start using it and how did it progress?
So when I was 15, 16, I got into ecstasy a lot. I was doing ecstasy to go to high school every day. That's how I would start my day, or to
You
just
were
go.
high on ecstasy going to high school?
Yeah, and going shopping, or if we'd go on a walk, I'd have to pop a pill. And then I got into cocaine and drinking from like 16 to 18. And then 18 to 21 was meth and alcohol. Then I got pregnant with my son when I was 21. I stayed sober until I was about 23. And then, unfortunately, for a Mother's Day gift, I got a sack of meth. Yes, and that got me restarted. And then I got into shooting meth from 23 to 25, and to come down, I got into heroin. And then in 2018, I came to Utah, and that's where I started getting into heroin with fentanyl and crack.
And it's interesting. We were just having a conversation about parents in recovery. You said for Mother's Day, which was really powerful, that for a gift you bought yourself.
No.
Somebody
My-
gave her a
Oh my
gift.
goodness! I'm sorry.
A
I
Mother's,
didn't hear
who the
My-
that.
hell would give you a
I
Mother's Day
know.
gift, a bag
That's
of meth?
worse.
My son's father.
Okay.
Did he want you to get high? Well, he must have been using that.
Yeah, he was using at the time.
So he wanted you to join the crowd.
Yes.
Jeez.
I know.
That, and so you did. And does that make things better or worse in a relationship?
Oh, I dumped him when I was 6 months pregnant. So he's never been in my son's life. He tried to be in and out, but he's still a meth user to this day. So he's out of the picture.
Boy, talk about misery loves company. Here's somebody in recovery.
I
Here's some
know.
meth. That, you know.
And you said that you moved here, so it's interesting. Where did you move from?
Lodi, California.
And coming from California to Utah, and then you come to Utah, and that's when you really get involved with heroin and fentanyl. Was it more available here?
Well, I was a really bad addict in Cali, but I wanted to get clean, so the plan was to come to Utah to get clean. And I relapsed because my take-homes for my methadone ran out, so it was easier to find heroin to get well because I was homeless, living in a truck in the snow, and trying to cold turkey from 90 milligrams of methadone. So it was just easier to get high again, so I did.
Yeah, which is common, right? Because when you're withdrawing, it just feels like death, and it is easier to go and get high, so you don't have to feel that way.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
then you found fentanyl. How easy was that?
First we would just, I always wanted to, get as high as I could, so we would try to find fentanyl, or heroin laced with fentanyl, but then finally I found someone that we just had pure fentanyl, and it literally only took 5 cc's of doing fentanyl for me to overdose the first time, which that's another story in itself also. I overdosed off my boyfriend's shot that he had already previously overdosed on. So I just took it out of his arm, finished the 5 cc's, and overdosed myself. Luckily, there was a third party there that saved us both. But
How
then,
did they save you?
Narcan. The injectable and the nasal. It took both for both of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't you worry about, it doesn't matter whether you're deep into addiction or not, you hear stories about people dying from overdoses of fentanyl. Did you worry about that or didn't you care?
The relationship that I was in at the time was very abusive. It was really hard that's how I survived. Even though it's not even really surviving, that's just how I went on living, was just getting high again. But finally I got sick of thinking about my family and my son, not knowing if I was dead or alive. I did every shot, not caring if I was going to come out of it. And then finally I just got sick of that. So that's when I got into treatment. But yeah.
I think when you're saying, I think it'd be really hard for people to understand, but when you say your boyfriend OD'd in front of you and you grabbed the needle and used it, I was trying to put myself in your shoes when I was using, and my thought process easily could be like, oh, that must be good stuff. I want some of that.
Yeah, I was jealous.
Yeah.
That sounds so stupid to outsiders saying
Yeah.
you just watched him overdose and you're putting the same stuff in your veins.
Yep, same stuff, same needle. I saw him, he was gray, and the third party was giving him the Narcan, and I just walked back to the bedroom, did it, and I tried to walk out and didn't even make it out to the hallway. But unfortunately, that day started the next 4 or 5 days of overdosing every single day. I tried to do a tiny bit of something, and I just kept overdosing.
And so did you have people with you, like a third party all the time?
No,
So then,
that boyfriend that came back was with me, so,
okay.
but
So
yeah.
I'm trying to picture this. Okay, you've OD'd, you told me, 10 times in a row or something. And so you know that at the point you put the needle in, that you might not ever wake up again. Where is your head when you're doing that? Did you want to die?
I didn't want to die, but my son is in Cali, and my parents are in Cali, and so is my brother. When I moved to Utah, I didn't realize until recently, the reason I moved to get sober and clean. But when I was in treatment, I realized why I really moved was because my son was 6 at the time. It was getting too hard to hide my drug use from him. So when I had the opportunity to move to Utah, it was my way out. I could go run amok and not have to worry about it. So I just went a little too far with that.
Did you ever think about, I suppose you don't, when you're deep in addiction, about how your son would react hearing that mom died of an overdose?
Yeah. Well, not at the time. Now I think about it more because after I graduated, I was able to go home and go visit him for the first time in 3 years, or over 3 years. And he's 10 now, so, and he asked me, he's like, can you be back, like, and live with me forever by the time I'm in 6th grade? And I'm like, that's a major thing. Like, I want to do that for him because that's when, like, big things happen. But for me, in middle school, when I went to middle school, that's when big things happened. Big things changed, body changes, friends, and everything like that. So we talked about being there, like, when he's in the 6th grade, but, like, that's my ultimate goal. Like, I won't go any further. Like, I won't be without him. I want to be a live-in parent when he is in middle school. Yes. But after I saw him this last trip, I thought about if he had found that out or whatever. Because he, like I said, he knows my treatment, and he knows I was in recovery. He doesn't know the gory details.
Right.
But he's not. He's very smart. He's very, very smart. So, and he listens a lot. So if he found that out, it would be hard to deal with. And I always get worried because his dad is an addict too, and I'm an addict. So I'm like, people tell me, like, aren't you worried about him? He's going to be an addict also. When I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I've heard that several times, but I don't believe it. He doesn't have to be.
No, I think there are
So
genetic
unfair.
tendencies. At least,
Yeah.
my problem was alcoholism, and I know that on the paternal side of my family, for a whole bunch of generations, everybody was an alcoholic. Okay, and that doesn't mean that I'm guaranteed of being an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But stuff I've read says that if I ingest alcohol and like it, that I am 50% more likely to become an alcoholic. Not necessarily that I will, but I'm more likely to become an alcoholic because of my genetic makeup.
Or even life circumstances, right? Like, I think that's so unfair for someone to say to a young woman that's
Yeah,
trying
right.
to
Yeah, you
get
bet.
her life back.
Yeah.
Like, worry about today and your next steps. So
Yeah.
if it does become, it could be him, it could be a cousin, it could be a loved
Yeah.
ones, whoever it is, that you are prepared to show up in a way that other people can't show up because you've been through it.
Right.
You had that lived experience. That just really breaks my heart.
Yeah. Well, and I hope. Do you have plans of getting back together with him? Do you have to go through some legal stuff?
I have full custody of my son. I'm off paper. It's just my choice of when I'm ready to go back. But I have an older brother who really stepped up for my son. He stepped up his entire life because his father wasn't there. But he's putting off kids until I'm settled and he knows I'm not going to go back. He's 5 years older than me. So I have major goals, but yeah, I just need to get back. I don't have to do anything but be there for, like, myself and my son. So it's just whenever I'm ready to go back. But I don't think relapse will be a part of my recovery. It doesn't have to be, and I don't want it to be. But I just need to be 100% sure that I'm not going to put my family through anything ever again. So as soon as I'm working full-time right now, so as soon as I save up enough money, I can get my license back. Because when I went to go visit my family, I didn't have my license, and it's kind of, I don't know, I stayed with my parents too. So it was great staying with them, but I don't want to have to depend on anyone but myself. So there's little goals that I have to accomplish before I can move back.
You're going to make it. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I love how you just stated to the world, like, I can have him, I want him, I love him, I'm a good woman, but it's not time just yet. I want to make sure, because when you love someone, like, you will make sure that you're right before going into their life. And so I thought that was super powerful, and I'm glad you said that. I think that's a good mom right there.
Thank
A
you.
really good mom.
You were used to getting high and numbing yourself to deal with life circumstances, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
what did you learn in treatment so that you don't have to numb yourself when something good or bad happens?
So accountability is huge in Odyssey, huge. I absolutely love it. It was something that I didn't even know about before. Like that's a huge thing. Boundaries is a huge thing. That it's personal boundaries, boundaries with people that are going to keep me safe and not using again. And just self-forgiveness. Before I used everything as an excuse to use. Now I use everything as an excuse to not use. And it feels good. It definitely feels good.
And that's an interesting way of looking at things because, I mean, all three of us deal with an addiction, and it's a lifelong, complicated disease that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
But we all used whatever substance to deal with something good, something bad, a death in the family, a partner dumping you, that kind of stuff. But the rest of the world goes through all that stuff and they don't get high, you know?
Right. I think it's being, when we talk about like accountability, like owning who you are and how you are. Because for whatever reason, our first thought is, ooh, I need to pick up. Right? Other people are like, oh, I hurt or something. I don't know what.
Yeah, let me go
other
talk
people,
to somebody because I want to cry on somebody's shoulder, not I have to use.
Yeah, because even we have over 10 years, and even over 10 years, sometimes my instant thought, like when I first heard fentanyl was out, I was mad. My first thought was I was mad. I was
You
like,
missed
where
out.
was that? Yes. When I was on the streets, because you don't need as much, it lasts longer, like all of that stuff. But then my second thought when I play it through, because I've learned how to like work through things, that was my very first thought was,
Really?
oh yeah, I was mad. You couldn't get
That's understandable.
fentanyl. Yeah.
See, one of my jobs at Odyssey is lining up if a TV station wants to do a story about a substance or something. And I remember lining up an interview with a recovering heroin addict, I guess. And I sat in from afar watching the interview, and I think it was about fentanyl overdose deaths. And the female reporter asked the guy, have you ever been with somebody who's died from a fentanyl overdose? And he said, yeah. And she said, and this goes to the story of your boyfriend. She said, well, I bet you never went to that dealer again. And he said, no, I immediately went to that dealer because I knew he was dealing good stuff.
Yep.
Which
Absolutely.
is such convoluted thinking. You know, I just watched somebody die. You watched your boyfriend overdose, and so you put the same needle in your arm.
Yeah.
Well, that's really screwy thinking if you think about it.
He wasn't going to enjoy that and me not enjoy it. Even though he died, he was gray. Like, I wasn't going to let that happen.
No. And there's also a point where where it's like, I just don't want to be sick and I don't care what I do.
Yeah.
Toilet water, just whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Like I'm using whatever I can because I don't want to be sick and I need to be able to show up. So I would need to inject heroin so I could just show up.
Yep.
What do you think the solution to, this is it's a growing problem. What did I see in the last year? 107,000 people died in the U.S. from overdoses. How do we deal with the issue? I mean, there's programs out there now that do have beds available, and because of the expansion of Medicaid, most people can get into a treatment program if they want to. So what do you think the solution is?
I'm not discrediting any program, but honestly, I've talked to several other people that have been in other programs, and they didn't survive Odyssey. And I'm so happy I survived Odyssey because I love it. It was the best thing I've ever done in my life. If there was more Odysseys around and more accountability, I think things would go better. Like I said, I'm not discrediting any other program, but there's just something about Odyssey that helps.
Well, and length of time makes a big difference to me. A lot of people, the posh retreats that you go to for rehab are 30-day programs because that's all their insurance will cover.
Right.
And I've talked to a lot of people who relapse after those programs. One who's a good friend of ours, and he said we sort of consider that a month-long vacation.
Yeah.
And we don't look upon it as recovery, whereas Odyssey's program, you were in it through all the different steps for a year, you know,
Yeah.
and you can't just, you can't, if you had 10 or 20 years of living life as an addict or an alcoholic or whatever, you can't just correct that in 30 days.
No.
Right.
You know,
You barely even learn to trust. And
well, your mind is barely
Yeah.
even clear,
yeah.
you know.
Might be able to look in the mirror at that point, and that's about it. Like, and to really like go through it, you need to learn about yourself. You need to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be vulnerable with people that I don't know.
And I'm only going to know for 27 more
Yeah.
days.
No way.
Whereas at Odyssey, I mean, you get to know people who stay in the house for a long time.
Yeah. The 8 months that I was at Lighthouse, my bed was ready at IOP, or my bed was ready at Sober Living and for IOP, and I wanted to give it up. I wanted to let him go, just let it go, and I would catch the next one. But one of the therapists, Anthony, pulled me in. He's like, "We've done all we can do for you in here. You've grown, you've earned it." But even after that 8 months, I wasn't ready to leave, to go be on my own. Even though I wasn't completely on my own, I still wanted the structure of Odyssey. So if you just put your all into it, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Like, I mean, 30 days I don't think is enough at all. But even 8 months at that time was not enough for me. I still love going to anything I can for Odyssey Grads Group, doing candidate outs. I have to be a part of it.
I remember when I left my program, I was scared because you are in sort of the podcast that we did last week. He described it as you're sort of in a bubble, okay, and it's a very controlled bubble with a lot of rules. And after you accept all the rules and you learn to live in that bubble, it's pretty easy to live.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have freedom.
And then your life also happens. You have bills. You need to be responsible. You
yeah.
have to make your own bed.
That's
You
right.
have to cook your own food.
Buy your own
Like,
clothes,
yeah.
do your own. Yeah, that's right.
Your adulting starts.
Yeah. So how was life when you got out?
I took like the first 3 months off. Like one of my therapist just said, all you have to do right now is stay clean, come to group, and just be in orientation. So that's what I did. I didn't work for the first 3 months, and that was the best way I could do it. I would go on walks, and it would feel weird because I was by myself, and I didn't have a staff person with me or
I
whatever.
can do whatever I want.
Yeah. So, but I stayed home a lot, like, because I didn't want to get triggered, and I was still learning about my new triggers outside of the walls of Odyssey. So I didn't do much for the first 3 months into I got lucky enough to live in Sober Living and go to groups, and that's what I did. I was moved up pretty quickly, so then my groups got less and less. That's why I wasn't allowed to voyage out technically, because I would only have group once a week. I require a lot of support. So that's why I nabbed out and then restarted in orientation. But like I said, I didn't work. I was just programmed. That's all I did.
Have you been tempted since you got out?
Not once. I've heard stories. I don't have a car right now because I can't get my license back till May 2023. So the one time I was walking home from Walmart and the bus missed me on 45th and 9th or whatever. And the bus missed me, just kept driving past, and I was so mad because I had all my bags in my arms. It was really hot outside, and I was like, you know what? I just want to say F this and drop everything and go to North Temple. But I didn't. That was the one time, and how I deal with that is I look at baby pictures and baby videos of my son. Like, that's my one way to get through it, because it just makes me laugh. It makes the time pass by, and it makes the triggers just disappear. That's my one way I get through it. But that was, yes, the one time I wasn't tempted, but I was ready to just say screw it. But yeah, other than that, my outpatient program really helped with being prepared for what was going to happen. My coping skills, my DBT skills, and all that, everything helped. Yeah.
When you were you forced into Odyssey by the criminal justice program, or?
Technically, no. I wasn't court ordered. I had a PO. His name's Caden Walker, and he's in all my assignments because I owe everything to him. I feel like, and he doesn't even know it. But he's a year younger than me, and the way he talked to me was just like an older brother kind of. And one day, well, every time I went into his office, I was high, and he was just like, "Are you tired of this yet?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And he came to this house I was staying at, or this apartment we were re-renovating with the abusive boyfriend, and the renovations, we got 1 step forward, 10 steps back. We were living in a place with literally no floors, no walls, because we did demolition, so it was dirt and a shower. So he came in there, and after that, that time meeting at the apartment, he was like, "Okay, you're gonna do an assessment, and let's just see what they say." And so my assessment was to do IOP, and he's like, "So if you want to keep your life and go back to being a mom, you're gonna go to inpatient." And so it was a verbal agreement between us, but not the courts. But that was the best thing I ever did.
That is so. I love that you can talk about a PO like that. They're
And
on
most
your
people say,
side.
"I hate my PO."
I know, I love my PO was the best.
Wow.
And Cameron Ward, because Caden Walker, he got moved to a different job when I got into Odyssey. So Cameron Ward, she was my next PO. And she was so supportive, just totally supportive of everything. And I would go check in with her, and I would tell her if I got if I got a border and that kind of stuff. And
Which is sort of like a punishment of some kind.
Intervention.
Intervention.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I shouldn't use the word punishment. Yeah.
And I would just talk to her, not I know she was my PO and she wasn't a girlfriend or anything like that, but all my family's in Cali. So I literally have my Odyssey family. I have my work family now. But that was someone that I could depend on. So I just talked to her and I told her everything. I'm open and honest about everything, and it makes my life a lot easier. But
we were talking about that in the last podcast.
Yeah.
You don't have to remember the lies you told.
yeah. But I would tell her, because I was on a no room, no breaker for over 21 days with every single male in the house. Yeah. So I would tell her about stuff like that, and she was just supportive. She knew everyone knows about my kid and my goals, my everything. So everyone, all my authority people have been super supportive.
And I think that's the key, is that just being able to be you, and say things okay, I'm on this breaker because I need to learn boundaries, really, that's what it comes down to. But being able to be I am not perfect, but I am trying.
Right.
And that's what helps. And I, when we asked if you had any thoughts of using, I think the first thought, once you find recovery, it's not actually picking up. It's because it's that emotional stuff that's going through. I'm hot, I'm walking. It's that emotional
The
that
bus
you need to
passed
keep.
me by.
Yeah.
Screw it.
They hate me. This is my life forever. Those
Yep.
are. That's what we think, and it's that emotional that we need to stay up on,
Yeah.
because people can relapse far before they pick up a drug
Sure.
or
Yeah.
alcohol. And so I loved how you said that point.
Yeah, and we talk about playing the tape, and your tape is your son.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And-
Sometimes I can play the tape a little bit too forward, though,
Yeah.
and that's something that I've had to, back up on. Because, yes, I can think forward to, where I want to be. I want to have a spot for just him and I, and go visit Grandma and Grandpa, not live with them anymore, and that kind of stuff. And I still have APMP things to pay for, collections and all that kind of stuff. So I can play the tape too far forward, but that's, again, when I just use my little coping skill of watching videos. Luckily, even though I was an addict, I was a good mom. I took millions of photos, millions of videos, so I have so many to look at, which I'm very happy about. But yeah.
I can see you were a good mom.
Yeah.
You can feel the love coming out of
Yeah,
her, right?
you light up when you watch this. Every time you talk about your son, your whole face just lights up, and you smile. It's adorable.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your honesty today.
Yeah.
The goal of our podcast is not to salaciously get into people's ugly lives, but to provide hope to people.
Yeah.
That there are you hear more about the negative things about addiction and everything else. You know, so-and-so was arrested for fighting with a cop or murdering someone, and they were high on meth and that kind
Right.
of stuff. But you so rarely hear about, and there's so many people who succeed. I mean, you know,
Absolutely.
and that's one thing we try to do, is show that recovery is possible.
Yeah. Speak out loud about what it's really about, and we can have thoughts, but it doesn't mean this or it doesn't mean that. So the more that we voice it, when you're asking how to change this, it's advocacy.
Yeah.
You know, people speaking up more and more about what it's really about. And so you are darling, and your son is a very,
Yeah.
very lucky young man.
Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
son and continuing to put your life back together. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you,
Good,
Randall.
good to see you again.
Oh man, I missed your face.
Wow. With that, I will thank you guys all for watching and listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.